Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Team Comp Tuesday, where every Tuesday we take a look at a different team composition and go over a rough rotation, how you should build the characters, and just a general guide on the team setup. This week's team, we are going to be covering one of Genshin's OG carries, kind of the first unit everyone wanted. It has fallen by the wayside a little bit, but that's Diluc, and definitely with, new people coming in, with more people losing him on the 50-50, I figured we might as well cover it because there's probably going to be some people who want to play this character. I enjoy this character. I actually have an alt account. I purposely made an alt account just to reroll till I got him for fun so I could play him. I think he's a nice, kind of simple, fun character that has a really good design, but does have some weaknesses, but is quite the enjoyable unit to play. And definitely as we keep getting more and more units, while his damage isn't necessarily improving a ton, there are some of his weaknesses that are being slightly mitigated, and we'll talk about that later as the video goes on. Alright, first up here is Diluc. Weapons. Black Slasher is totally fine if you're willing to use your Star Glitter on it. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. I just did it because he is my main character on this account, so I wanted to give him the best weapon I could, so I did it. Any 5-star is pretty good. Wolf's Gravestone, Ito's, or Eula's Greatsword especially, all three of those being pretty decent. Unforged is okay as well. Prototype Archaic, also a pretty good option. The Battle Pass is definitely a sword I would recommend if you are in a financial position to get it. The Serpent Spine is one of the best weapons in the entire game, not even just out of the 4 stars. It's got an insane passive that increases damage done as you don't take damage. It also has a very high crit rate substat, which is very good for character building. So definitely worth getting if you were in a financial position to do so. Also kind of memed on in the past, but the Rain Slasher is unironically a very good greatsword for Diluc. Elemental Mastery is a stat that he very much enjoys. On top of him being able to take use of the passive, since you will basically always be playing him in a Vaporized team. There are some Melt teams you can play, but the Vaporized teams are more consistent, and I personally would just recommend to play the Vaporized teams. And finally, for talents, for artifacts, Crimson Witch is basically designed for him. I would try to get the best set you can for this. Standard DPS setup, pyro damage on Goblet, crit rate or crit damage on Circlet, whichever you need more of, and then either attack or elemental mastery on the Sands, whichever one you have better substats on. And then for talents, all 3 of his talents are important, so level them up. You don't have to crown them like I did. Like I said, he's my main character on this account, so that's why I do it. But you do want to level them all up, as all of them are important to his damage output. Alright, next up we're going to be talking about the Hydro option for Diluc. Generally, Xingqiu is the one most people are going to run. You can run Yellen here. There are some characters where Yellen is actually, to a degree, a downgrade from Xingqiu due to them applying Pyro so quick. Characters like Hu Tao and Zhang Ling. Arguably, using solo Yellen isn't as good as Xingqiu. But for Diluc, since he applies Hydro slower, you can use Yellen. I don't have her on this account, but she is an option. But Xingqiu is a character most people have, and he is kind of the standard unit to put here. Sacrificial Sword, by far his best weapon if you have it. If not, maybe an Elemental Mastery sword of some sort. Elemental Energy Recharge sword of some sort. Artifacts, you actually want a Emblem of Severed Fate set here. I just don't have a good spare set lying around, so I have them on a 2-piece Heart of Death's 2-piece Noblesse, which is also pretty good. For artifacts, you want crit rate or crit damage, Circlet, whichever one you have better of, Hydro damage, Goblet, and then for Sands, you can either use Energy Recharge or Attack, depending on how much Energy Recharge you have from substats. I personally prefer to be over energy recharge just because it makes it more comfy to play. You want to be around this 200 mark generally to have enough energy recharge, but I personally prefer just to have a little bit more for it to be more comfy. But you can tweak this and get more damage. For example, if you run in attack sands, you might be able to get away with something like 180, especially if you're killing stuff. But personally, I prefer to go for the consistency and just run energy over energy recharge my Xingqiu. Talents, you want to level up his E and his ultimate. His E actually does do a ton of damage if you can vaporize, because you can actually vaporize both hits of it with Bennett, and it's got really high multipliers, so I definitely recommend leveling both of those up. Alright, and now we're going to go over the other Hydro option you have besides Xingqiu, Yelan. Yeah, personally, just run whichever one you have or whichever one you don't need for another team. For most people, that'll be Xingqiu, but maybe there's some of you that need Xingqiu for another team, so you can use Yelan, or maybe you just want to use Yelan. So weapons, Favonius is her best 4-star, generally. She needs the energy recharge for her ultimate. It gives you some energy particles for your other characters. 5 stars, stat stick like Skyward Harp is okay. She doesn't actually care about base attack, so a lot of bows are kind of just okay. Sacrificial, again, kind of okay. But Favonius is generally where I would be. Her signature bow is fine, and what's the other one? Elegy is also quite good if you have it. But if you don't have Elegy, I would go Favonius, and if you have Elegy, I would use Elegy. Artifact set for her. Emblem of Severed Fate set. Relatively normal stuff here. Crit rate, hydro damage, and HP on her sands. Talents, E and ultimate level up. Her skills scale basically only with her HP, so you don't really need to worry about her attack or anything like that. Alright, and next up in Diluc's team, you want this is kind of your flex slot, but this is generally an Anemo damage dealer as Vivi, or an emo character, as Vivi is very, very good, and buffs are great. Kazuo is the one I tend to use just because it makes Diluc's damage better. You can run with Sucrose instead, and we'll go over her right after this, but for Kazuo, weapons, Favonius Sword, you want to make sure you have enough energy recharge to ult often. I know I wasn't ulting in a lot of the clips, but that's because stuff would have died before the ult ended, because it just does a lot of damage. But you generally want enough energy recharge to ult off cooldown. Also, getting energy particles for other characters is great. If you have absolutely insane substats, okay, I'm talking like close to 200 ER off just substats, you can go for Iron Sting or another Elemental Mastery Sword for more buff capabilities, but if not, highly recommend the Favonius Sword. Super underrated on Kazuo by a lot of people. Artifacts are easy, Viridescent Venerer, and basically as much Elemental Mastery as you can get. Hats, Goblet, Sands, all Elemental Mastery. Besides that, you're looking for any Elemental Mastery substats you can pick up, any Energy Recharge substats you can pick up, and if you can pick up a little bit of crit rate for your Favonius Sword, that's great too. For talents, all 3 of his need to be leveled if you want him to do damage. You don't really have to level his a ton, since he's good enough basically just being a VV Shredder and a buffer. But if you want him to do some more damage, you do actually have to level all 3 up, as this E here, the plunge attack uses his normal attack modifier, so you do actually have to level his normal attack as well. Also, side note, as with the Nemo characters, you want to get them as high of a level as humanly possible, as Swirl's damage is only calculated based off character level and elemental mastery, which is why we stack a lot of elemental mastery, and you want to get your Nemo characters to 90 if you can. Alright. Up next is the other option you have to use instead of Kazuo. She is Sucrose. She is functionally a very similar unit with a very similar playstyle. Now, while Kazuo might have you do better numbers every once in a while, Sucrose's elemental mastery sharing is going to make Diluc's Vaporizes do more damage. They end up being very similar power level units. You can kind of just run whichever one you prefer, or whichever one you have, or whichever one you don't need for another team. For weapons, Sac Frags is a pretty good option on Sucrose, as Elemental Mastery is good for her, as well as the CD reduction. Thrilling Tales is also quite good as well, as long as you make sure you transfer the buff to Diluc and let him use the buff. As long as you're doing that, Thrilling Tales is also quite good for Sucrose here. I just like Sac Frags for consistency, and a lot of other teams I play are in, I use Sac Frags, so sometimes I'm lazy and can't be bothered to swap. Same thing as Kazuha though, as much EM as humanly possible. EM Hat, EM Goblet, EM Sands, as much EM and substats as you possibly can, as well as much energy recharge as you can. For talents, you really don't have to level up any of hers, because unlike Kazuha, she doesn't do much personal damage, but you can level up her E and her ultimate if you want. You can ignore her normal attack. That's for a different team that I have her normal attack leveled up for. And last, but certainly not least, is the Benny Boy. Benny Boy is the healer of choice for this unit. For this team, triggers Pyro Resonance, massive attack buff, good stuff all around. Weapons, basically any energy recharge weapon. For anyone who doesn't have Aquila or another high base attack 5-star, I actually highly recommend the new Sumeru Craftable Sword. It's very good. It's got a very high base attack as well as energy recharge substat. I just haven't done Sumeru yet to unlock it. But if you don't, then Festering Desire is pretty good. Favonius is pretty good. Even Sacrificial, if you have extra ones lying around, is pretty okay. Otherwise, you can just optionally go for a sword like Rancor that just has a really high base attack, but I would personally recommend sticking to Sumeru Craftable unless you have like Aquila Favonia that you could use on your Bennett. Artifacts are easy, Noblesse Oblige, and then you kind of have two options you can go for. You can either go for HP stacking for kind of a healer playstyle on Goblet and Circlet, or you can go damage and go Pyro Damage Goblet and crit rate or crit damage on Circlet. Personally, that's generally what I do on my main, but as this is an alt account where a lot of the characters are lower investment, I personally just have Benny set up just for raw healing, but I do eventually intend on swapping him over to a true damage setup, as I feel like it's much better. So definitely get a crit rate Circlet here, get a Pyro damage here, and then generally energy recharge on your Sands. Substats, again, as much energy recharge as humanly possible to ult off cooldown. For talents, ultimate is the main one that you care about leveling. You can level his E as well, since you're going to be pressing it sometimes just to build energy. Up to you. But definitely the ultimate is highly worth leveling and putting as much resources as you can into, as it is his main skill that makes him very powerful. Alrighty. Really quick before we go to the section where we do a practice rotation, I just wanted to briefly talk about Diluc just as a character. Diluc is a character that started the game out as basically the most desirable unit and slowly has kind of crept down and down. He is by no means a bad unit. His main weakness is just the fact that he requires or desires basically, the best units in the game to be his supports, where arguably they could be better suited elsewhere. But I don't think that should deter you from playing him. I've played him on this alt account basically since the start, and he's never been the problem. Honestly, like, even when I've tried to do Abyss, I haven't 12-starred Abyss on this account. This account gets played like a week every like 3 months or something, so despite this account being 2 years old, I've probably only put like 2 or 3 months worth of resin into it at most. So yeah, the account's actually quite weak. But anyway, despite that, that's not an excuse. But what I'm just getting to is that I tend to not have any problems with his side of the Abyss. I tend to not have problems with his damage output, even on my lower powered account. The problem is the units he pulls away from other teams, which makes the second side weaker. But there are ways around that if you comp correctly, if you roll for certain units, like definitely rolling for a unit like Yelan and making sure you have Kazuha and Sucrose will alleviate a lot of that pressure in team building off you. Also, one of the reasons I personally wanted to do this team showcase today, despite him being, you know, one of my favorite characters, especially looks-wise. Gameplay-wise, he's kind of okay. He's kind of midish to slightly above midish. I mean, he's no Sino, Hu Tao, or Zhao. I like those really quick characters, but he's still pretty fun. But I just love the way he looks. He's probably one of my favorite characters from an aesthetic standpoint. But the main reason I wanted to do this showcase today is I was thinking about it this morning, and definitely now that we have Dendro out and Kaching has a pretty good team now with her Aggravate team, there's actually a reasonable world where someone could play like a Diluc team and a Kaching team as their like two main teams. And I just think it's fun that Genshins, two OG 5-stars that you'll slowly eventually get constellations for as you lose 50/50s, now actually each have a solid team that you could play, and someone could realistically make an account where those are the main two teams they play. And I don't know, there's something about that. I know this game's only 2 years old, but I'm getting nostalgic, okay? But that's going to be it for this section, and we're going to go over to the training dummy and do a sample rotation. Oh, really quick before we go over to the dummy, I want to talk just briefly about Diluc's like attack strings. So Diluc's E is like a 3-hit ability that uses 3 different like slashes basically, but you can actually weave autos between each one. You can weave single auto, and I think you can even weave double auto. Similar to like the comparison everybody made in the beginning was like Riven from League of Legends, if anyone's played that. But you even do 2 autos between each E before the cast goes like over. But if you do hold it for too long, the cast will disappear. However, due to the way elemental gauges work, and like due to the way that hydro like applications and ICD on reactions work, I personally highly recommend just doing 1 attack between each E, even though you can fit in 2 or sometimes even 3 pretty comfortably, just because you want to make sure that the E is the hit that is vaporizing, as it has a much higher modifier than the auto attack. See, the second hit here is only 173, whereas the first hit here is 170, but the ones after that are much higher. So it is definitely worth making sure that the E is the hit that vaporizes, not the second auto. Arguably, though, the first time, maybe it's worth trying to make the second auto. Actually, you'd have to vaporize on the first auto. So yeah, definitely 1 auto between each E. However, I'm pretty sure once you get C6, this is a little bit of a weird tangent, but once you get C6, you can actually do the 2 auto attacks, because you get enough attack speed between each one to make sure the vaporize is still on the E. Alright, we're doing the rough rotation demonstration. This is by no means what you have to do, but it's just what I relatively do. Lead with Bennett Q, Kazuo E for Swirl, Jimmy Cho to bait it, make sure he's Hydro applied, then Diluc ult, and then you normal attack E, normal attack E, normal attack E. And then you go through 4 autos to a dash cancel when your normal attack strings. And when you get the chance to, you go back through doing 1 normal attack, 1 E. Then you can battery Bennett, swirl again. Make sure you're vaporizing your Jingcho E's. Your Diluc might not have ult back, but that's fine. It's a low cost, so you'll get it back eventually. Just keep using his E's and weaving normals between each one so that Jingcho's Rain Swords come down and apply Hydro so you can vaporize on the next swing. Again, this isn't meant to be the most perfect or most optimal rotation. This is just to give you a rough idea. I want to thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed and got some semi-useful information out of this. I hope now you go and build your Diluc and have fun and enjoy him. Next week, I'm not exactly sure what we're going to do, but I think we're probably going to do another Dendro team. So look forward to that next week. But, as always, good luck if you're... Oh, I will not be rolling for Nilu, or else I would be doing her comp next week. As she's not a unit I personally have a lot of interest in at this very moment. But maybe next week we'll do another for fun team. I don't know. We'll see. But I want to thank you for watching. Good luck if you're rolling, and have a great day.